This is True News, the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help us God. Former Vice President Mike Pence's team found classified documents in his Indiana home. Mr. Pence's team contacted the National Archives and Records Administration to request assistance in collecting and transferring documents bearing classification tags. Let's start today by looking at a headline published by CNN, classified documents found at Pence's Indiana home. And Doc Burkhart has the details as reported by CNN.
Yes, Rick. A lawyer for former Vice President Mike Pence discovered about a dozen documents marked as classified at Pence's Indiana home last week, and he has turned those classified records over to the FBI. Multiple sources familiar with the matter told CNN. The FBI and the Justice Department's National Security Division have launched a review of the documents and how they ended up in Pence's house in Indiana. The discovery comes after Pence has repeatedly said he did not have any classified documents in his possession. Now, Mr. Pence asked his lawyer with experience handling classified material to conduct the search of his home out of an abundance of caution. Sources said that the attorney, Matt Morgan, began going through 4 boxes stored at Pence's house last week, finding a small number of documents with classified markings. Pence's lawyer immediately alerted the National Archives, the sources said. In turn, the archives informed the Justice Department. A lawyer for Mr. Pence told CNN that the FBI requested to pick up the documents with classified markings that evening, and Mr. Pence agreed. In a letter to the National Archives obtained by CNN, Pence's representative to the archives, Greg Jacob, wrote that a small number of documents bearing classified markings were inadvertently boxed and transported to the vice president's home. Now, the classified material was stored in boxes that went first to Pence's temporary home in Virginia before they were moved to Indiana, according to sources. Now, the boxes were not in a secure area, but they were taped up and were not believed to have been opened since they were packed, according to Pence's attorney. Once the classified documents were discovered, the sources said they were placed inside a safe located in the house. So that's the latest in the information that we have here on this. You know, Rick, after work tonight, I think I better go home and start searching through some boxes at my own house to make sure I don't have any classified documents.
I was sitting here as you were reading the CNN report. I was imagining how many politicians and bureaucrats in Washington have been quietly going to their homes, going through their closets, their basements, their attics, their garages, and opening up every box. You know there's a lot of them who are worried.
Sure.
They're nervous. But this is I don't know, Doc. I think obviously this is damaging Mike Pence's reputation. It's almost like they're all being taken out of the race, one by one.
Right.
Who's going to be left that never saw a classified document?
And that's just it. Rick, is it also possible that this is an inoculation tactic that, maybe they're trying to deflect some of the attention that's on Joe Biden right now and put it on someone else?
No, I don't think so, Doc. I think these guys are it appears that there is an effort to clear the playing field for 2024.
So you've taken out...
Mike Pence's, his candidacy was wounded today.
Yes, in a big way.
Trump has been damaged. Biden has been damaged. Now Pence. Are we going to be the only people running for president in 2024 will be county commissioners who never had access to classified documents? So there's going to be more. I wonder what's at the house of Eric Swalwell and Adam Schiff.
How about the Pelosi's?
And the Pelosi's.
We know they have hammers there. Do they have classified documents there?
That's a good question. Anybody on the Senate Intelligence Committee, the House Intelligence Committee, have they taken documents? What about their staff members? This is going to get down also to members of the staff of these politicians.
Are we going to hear over the next couple of weeks just a plethora of classified confessions here popping up, you think?
Probably.
To get ahead of the investigations that are coming?
Probably so. But it's certainly, the other thing that has been damaged is the Biden administration's case against Donald Trump.
Right.
Nobody's talking about classified documents at Mar-a-Lago anymore, are they?
No, they're not.
Wait until they find them inside newsrooms. Maybe CNN should search their boxes.
Their boxes, yes.
Maybe the Washington Post, New York Times. But Donald Trump is no longer the bad guy that they were painting months ago.
And Donald Trump was not hiding classified documents.
No.
The National Archives knew exactly where they were.
Right.
They knew what documents he had at Mar-a-Lago. And Trump's lawyers and the National Archives had been in conversations for months regarding the documents that Donald Trump makes the case that he declassified, which he could do as president. But what you have now is we have Joe Biden, who was vice president, now Mike Pence, who was vice president, with classified documents. They do not have the authority to declassify documents, despite what Whoopi Goldberg says on The View. They don't have that authority. But Rick, what gets me is, how do you walk out of anywhere with classified documents? I mean, I was in the military, and we were to handle classified documents with kid gloves while we were in the military.
Well, these guys obviously put them in a briefcase and walked out the door, and nobody bothered to look. You know, I said to you, I should have brought it. I just thought about this. I should have brought the video. Remember the video I sent to you about how Richard Nixon accidentally transported a pound of marijuana through an airport?
For Louis Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong. Who told us? Was it? It was
Roger Stone.
Roger Stone told this story that Louis Armstrong,
who at the time was the goodwill ambassador for the U.S. He was traveling around and doing nice things and everything.
Representing the United States, and he had just come into, was it JFK Airport?
I think so.
One of the international hub airports, and he had according to Roger Stone, Louis Armstrong had a pound of pot
in his suitcase.
In his suitcase.
Yeah.
The way the story was, he didn't expect that he was going to have to go through customs,
right?
Because he was the
goodwill ambassador.
Goodwill ambassador, and they sent him to customs, and he panicked. And just at that very moment, Richard Nixon came through the airport, saw Louis Armstrong. They started talking, and Nixon said, "What are you doing over here in this line?" Which is to go through the immigration line. And Louis said, "Well, that's where they sent me." And Nixon knew that he was the goodwill ambassador, and he said, "Oh no, you're not going to go through this line. Let me take your luggage for you." And
so Vice President Nixon walked through customs
with a pound of pot,
with Louis Armstrong's pot.
Well, I'm telling that story, Doc, because how many people walked out the door of the White House or the National Security Council office or the Pentagon, carrying somebody else's documents for them and not knowing it? How many people picked up somebody's briefcase and said, "Senator, let me carry this for you. Mr. Vice President, I'll take this for you." Okay? Walked it out. That's probably happened many times. But the big story, the big one that nobody has talked about yet, is Barack Hussein Obama. How many documents did he take to Chicago?
Thousands.
There were so many documents. My understanding is the National Archives opened up a branch office either inside or next to his presidential library.
Well, will they do a search for that, for classified documents? Oh, sorry. I forgot it's Barack Obama.
Barack Obama.
So,
well, it just seems like a lot of big names are being taken out of the 2024 presidential race. Now, this could also go the other way, Doc. So many people will be tarnished that by the time we get to 2024, the public will be, they've all had documents.
Right.
What's it matter? We don't even care anymore. They've all carried them home. You brought up to my remembrance today Sandy Berger, National Security Advisor to Bill Clinton.
Yes.
And he got caught coming out of the National Archives with classified documents in his underwear.
Yes. Now,
The National Security Advisor stuck them in his. What's your story? What's your alibi for that one? Well, he ended up pleading guilty. We've got the story from. This was March 2005.
Now, the theft of the classified information was years before, a couple years before, related to 9/11 of all things. Sandy Berger, who was President Clinton's top national security aide, pled guilty Friday to taking classified documents from the National Archives and cutting them up with scissors. Of course, this is March 2005. Rather than the honest mistake, remember, everybody's saying honest mistake right now too, Rick. Rather than the honest mistake he described last summer, Berger acknowledged to U.S. Magistrate Deborah Robinson that he intentionally took and deliberately destroyed 3 copies of the same document dealing with terror threats during the 2000 Millennium Celebration. Guilty, Your Honor, Berger responded when asked how he wanted to plead. Now, the charge of unauthorized removal and retention of classified material is a misdemeanor, and that carries a maximum sentence of a year in prison and up to a $100,000 fine. Now, however, under a plea agreement that Robinson must accept, Berger would serve no jail time, but instead pay a $10,000 fine, surrender his security clearance for 3 years, and cooperate with investigators. Security clearance allows access to classified government materials. He ended up, at the end, getting a suspended sentence for 3 years, paying a $50,000 fine. And then 3 years later, his security clearance was restored, and he went into business with Madeleine Albright. And they set up one of those policy think tank things, and he worked there until his death in 2015.
Okay, so let's go back to this. The documents that he stole 3 copies of the same document. So clearly, he wanted that document eradicated. He cut them up with scissors. 3 copies of the same document. And that document pertained to terrorist threats during the 2000 Millennium Celebration.
Yes, leading up to eventually 9/11. So
this was the night of Y2K?
Right. They were expecting something to happen.
That's not the way I see it.
Well, I mean,
okay,
looking back at it, and so
there's something, Doc, on that document that he had to get rid of it. There was evidence. There was evidence he had to destroy. It bothered him so much that there was information in that document that he risked his career, and he got caught at it.
Right.
Going into the National Archives, stuffing the documents into his underwear.
Right.
What was on the document?
Well, and that's the amazing part about all this.
About a terrorist attack.
Yes,
Well,
about potential terrorist attack.
Well, was it a planned false flag?
That's what's shocking to me in the several reports that I looked at in that time period. No one asked him what was on the report.
I know, it never came out.
No one asked.
Right.
And that has always bothered me. I mean, yeah, the former National Security Advisor walking out the door with classified documents in his briefs, that's big.
Not his briefcase.
Yes,
but
but the idea that no one asked him what was on the documents, the duplicate documents.
But the feds
That
knew.
means that was something more threatening than the actual theft of the document itself.
Well, the feds knew what he took, but they never told the public.
Right.
The media never asked the feds. the media never asked the court because there was an agreement. We don't talk about it. What was on the document that he had to destroy? It had something to do with a planned terrorist attack on the night of Y2K, 1999. The only thing I can think is that it implicated an agency or another government in carrying out a false flag terrorist attack.
When the sentencing occurred with Berger, he was fined $50,000, one for each document. Mm-hmm. Now, in this early report in March, it only mentioned 3 documents, but by the time we got to November, later that year, where the sentencing came down, it had gone to 5 documents. Still, once again, no discussion about what was on it. There was a national archivist who was investigating Berger, and he suggested that Berger may have walked out the door with hundreds of documents. That was the suggestion. But they had to pin something on Berger. They had to take him. They got him. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing story that now today we have vice presidents that have, we have Joe Biden in the secure garage where he keeps his Corvette. The story today with Pence, it wasn't even in a secure location, it says. The CNN story.
Well, it had tape on the box.
It had tape on, and it probably hadn't been opened. How do you know? I mean, really. And it had gone to a house in Virginia first. Well, who had access to the house? Just the VP family? Who moved the box from Virginia to Indiana? Mm-hmm. I mean, these are legitimate questions that need to be asked, whether they're Democrat or Republican, either way. They're not going to be asked.
What I don't accept is, you're either president or vice president, and your term of office is ending. Either you didn't win re-election or you didn't run for re-election.
Okay.
There's no surprise of what your last day in office. It's noon, January 20th.
Like, oh, I forgot. Today's my last day.
Okay. So, how many days do you have between the election, early November, and January 20th? You've got most of November,
almost 3 months,
December, and half of January. You tell me that you and your staff wait until the last minute? Because the argument that they're making is, in the hubbub of packing up and leaving, classified documents were accidentally put in the boxes. Seriously? Nobody in your office, nobody in the National Security Council, nobody, whatever agency came to you and said, Mr. Vice President, now you got 3 months here, and we need to know every classified document that's here, and there has to be a system to turn them in, and then those documents to be transported by safe courier to the National Archives. You tell me there's no system for that? If that's accurate, then
that's scary.
It's scary because it means that they're so sloppy, so careless. For me, I can't imagine it because I'm thinking if I were in that position, I would be handling classified documents almost like the radioactive.
Right. I mean, that's what we were taught in the military. And so with kid gloves, I mean, only certain people could even touch it. And here's something else we'll throw in the mix, too. Something that Donald Trump said back when the photo came out of all the folders scattered on the floor and everything. Mr. Trump said, a lot of those folders are empty.
Mm-hmm. He said he just liked to collect folders.
All right, so there were classified documents in those folders at some point in time. When did they get taken out of the classified folder? And how many other documents, because even in the story with Pence today, they're shipping all the records back to the archives of the vice president to see if there's any other documents. So how many pieces of classified information have been pulled out of classified folders and have walked away as well?
I don't know.
The National Archives could possibly have folders sitting on the shelf that says we have this material, this piece of classified information is here, and yet the folder be empty.
Yes.
Which is essentially what Burkhart did.
Right.
So,
hey, there's a report, I first saw it in the South China Morning Post, that Speaker Kevin McCarthy may be planning a visit to Taiwan, follow up on the in the spirit of Nancy Pelosi.
Yes.
But this is making news in Asia.
yes, Punchbowl was reporting it here in the U.S., and it says the U.S. Defense Department is preparing for House of Representatives Speaker Kevin McCarthy to visit Taiwan later this year. Punchbowl News reported on Monday, citing an official directly involved. Punchbowl also said that planning for the trip is in early stages and that officials in U.S. President Joe Biden's administration expect McCarthy to visit sometime in the spring. And so once again, we have the third highest ranking member of the U.S. government visiting Taiwan. What message is that sending? Well, it's going to, once again, cause provocation with China. China's going to sit up and take notice again. Will they do this time in response? And what warnings will we not heed as well this time that we did with Nancy Pelosi?
One thing's for sure, it's not going to calm things down.
Yes.
It's only going to heat things up. TV 12, television network in Israel, is reporting that the joint U.S.-Israel air drill was meant to bomb Iranian nuke sites in Negev.
So what they're saying basically is the drill wasn't a drill then, right? As part of an ongoing drill between the Israeli Air Force and the U.S. Central Command, American B-52 strategic bombers will drop live ammunition at targets in southern Israel tomorrow. Channel 12 News, without citing a source, says the targets in the Negev desert will simulate Iranian nuclear sites. The network says the bombers will drop 100 tons of explosives, also without citing any source. However, a U.S. official speaking to American media says there will be no mock-ups of Iranian targets during the drills, and that the exercises are not oriented around any particular adversary, but rather meant to send a message to Iran and China as well.
So the message would be, we can fight you, both of you, and Russia at the same time. That would be the message.
That's what they're really trying to say, that we can fight a three-front war.
We got a short video. This was released from CENTCOM today involving this drill. TruNews, we are fair propaganda distributors. You got a war propaganda video?
Send it our way.
Send it our way. We'll show it for you. Okay.
And that video was produced not just with CENTCOM, but in cooperation with the Israeli Defense Force. So
we have some action, Doc, on the tank front. Another tankathon I was talking about last night.
And still going on.
It's happening. It's the pledges are coming in. And Germany was the big one today that made a pledge of tanks. But before we get to that one, here's Times of London. Poland tells Germany, join our common cause. You see, Poland's saying, come on, Germany, pick up that phone and call us right now.
Make your pledge.
And make your tank pledge today. And Germany did make that call. But before we get to it, we'll read what Poland said.
Yes, so earlier in the day, Poland had formally requested that Germany allow it to send Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine, calling on Berlin to rally behind the common cause of security in Europe after Annalena Baerbock, the German foreign minister, said the country would not block sending the tanks to the Ukrainian army. Mariusz Błaszczak, Poland's defense minister, said that Warsaw had made the formal request following the German U-turn. Under international arms re-export rules, Berlin's permission is required for the German-made tanks. So Błaszczak appealed to Germany to join the coalition of countries supporting Ukraine with Leopard 2 tanks, referring to Berlin's reluctance to send its own tanks to Ukraine. So basically, Rick, going along with your tankathon analogy, they had matching tanks.
A matching grant.
So a matching grant of tanks, and we just need Germany to match it, if you will.
There you go. The show is on. Here's the tweet that they put out today.
So this is from Mariusz Błaszczak, the Poland defense minister. The Germans have already received a request for consent to the transfer of Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. I also appealed to the German side to join the coalition of countries supporting Ukraine with Leopard 2 tanks. This is our common cause because it is about the security of the whole of Europe. Well, it wouldn't have to be if you guys weren't fighting in Ukraine. So the Wall Street Journal here is talking about now a shift in policy that's taking place here in the U.S. Up till now, we've been a bit reticent, especially the Pentagon, in providing Abrams tanks to Ukraine. But as political pressure is building in D.C., the U.S. is now leaning toward providing those Abrams tanks to Ukraine. And maybe they'll get more than just the one that Representative McCall was talking about.
Look how fast it's moved in just a couple of days.
Yes. I mean, on Sunday, there was no movement at all. Representative McCall was begging, let's just send one tank. If we just get one tank, we'll get all these other countries to send their Leopard tanks. Well, now, the Leopard tanks are moving now. So do we need to send Abrams tanks? Well, we're going to anyway. And so the Biden administration leaning towards sending a significant number, remember just one earlier, significant number of Abrams M1 tanks to Ukraine, and an announcement of the deliveries could come this week, U.S. officials said. The announcement would be part of a broader diplomatic understanding with Germany in which Berlin would agree to send a smaller number of its own Leopard 2 tanks and would also approve the delivery of more of the German-made tanks by Poland and other nations. So you know what this tells me, Rick? That agreement is already in place. They've already made the agreement.
Yeah, Doc,
or else Germany wouldn't be moving ahead on the Leopard 2 tanks.
Doc, this is a big development and it's very troubling. Biden is leaning towards sending a significant number of tanks.
Right.
The war just got worse.
Now, last week, Secretary Austin was saying Abrams tanks aren't built for this kind of combat that we're looking at. They aren't built for this kind of terrain. They aren't built for, basically they're going to be facing mud and bog and stuff like that. So what's changed? The Pentagon last week didn't want to send equipment because they didn't want to lose equipment. But now we're sending a significant number of tanks.
Because the politicians have overridden the Pentagon. And the Pentagon boys saluted and said, okay, you want Abrams sent to Ukraine, we'll do it. That's what's going on. The political pressure is too great. But the bottom line is the Russians are going to perceive this as an act of aggression from the United States and Germany and Poland, and that we are literally spitting in the Russians' face. The Russians have told us, don't send any more equipment. We're going to respond harshly. And so what we've done is that the U.S. has just insulted the Russians and told them we're sending more. We're not listening. We're not going to negotiate. We're not going to back down. We're going to push the limits to see how far we can go. And to me, Doc, it looks like instead of things slowing down this spring, they're actually going to be heating up. Because it's going to take a while to get the tanks there.
Right.
They're not going to, I mean, Amazon's not going to deliver them tomorrow.
Right. They're not packing them up tonight and delivering them tomorrow. It's going to take, let's say, 60 to 90 days.
That's what I'm thinking.
So we're
You're looking at probably
March,
April.
So, but remember that chart we showed the other day, Rick, about the number of tanks that the different countries had. And Russia had over 12,000 tanks available resources. Is that how many tanks we're going to park in Ukraine to fight Russia?
What happens if Russia just moves 1,000 tanks into Ukraine? And what happens then? I mean, if you just saw an old-fashioned tank invasion of a country, something you haven't seen since World War II, that may happen. The Russians could respond with just an old-fashioned
tank war. And remember, too, Russia is also protecting one of the longest borders in the world with all the countries that in Europe that run along, that we've got tanks parked at the border there, too. And who knows, at some point, they may just go across the border into Russia. I mean, that's what they're there for, right?
That's right.
So,
DW News in Germany reporting Germany to send Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. So they finally got Olaf Scholz to cave in, and now the race is on.
Well, German news magazines Der Spiegel and others published stories on Tuesday saying that the government in Berlin had decided to send those Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. And this follows a long-running debate on the issue among NATO allies and comes after Poland formally asked Berlin for permission to send some of its Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine earlier on Tuesday. Spiegel magazine reported that the decision would involve sending at least one company of Leopard 2A6 tanks. German-made military equipment can only be sent to third countries with approval from Berlin. Spiegel reported that other European countries, including some in Scandinavia, would also supply their tanks to Kiev. And then, although Germany's defense ministry, military, and several other actors would surely have been involved in discussions, ultimately the authority to make this decision rested with Chancellor Olaf Scholz. And so he finally gave in to the pressure from the other members of the NATO alliance, Poland, France, and of course the U.S. as well.
Doc, this next story, I'm surprised not surprised why it's not getting the publicity here it should be getting. There's a lot of stories that should be getting a lot of publicity. This one is not, but this comes out of the Financial Times in London. Ukraine officials resign as Zelensky moves to ease corruption concerns. Suddenly, Zelensky he's a government reformer, Doc. He's against corruption. And a big chunk of his cabinet resigned this week because they got caught with their hands in the cookie jar.
Well, there's no accountability for all this money and all these weapons that are being sent there. And we know, and the U.S. government knows too, that a lot of these weapons that we are shipping over there are ending up in the black market. And so now, Mr. Zelensky is no angel. Let's just make that clear. Several senior Ukrainian officials have resigned after President Volodymyr Zelensky swiftly sought to diffuse concerns over corruption at a time when he is requesting more Western weaponry to repel Russian forces. He said, "We have made personnel decisions regarding officials of various levels in ministries and other central government bodies in the regions and in the law enforcement system," Zelensky said in his overnight address to the nation. More departures are expected amid a broader reshuffling of key roles in the next few days. Now, on Tuesday, Zelensky accepted the resignation of Krylo Timoshenko, deputy head of his administration. I mean, this was like number 3 in his administration, who had been criticized in local media for using a luxury car registered to an acquaintance, as well as a sport utility vehicle donated for humanitarian needs. 5 regional governors were also the defense ministry said it hoped the resignation of Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov accepted the resignation of his deputy Vyacheslav Shapovalov after reports pointed to probes into alleged food procurements for the armed forces at inflated prices. And the defense minister said it hoped that the resignation of Shapovalov, who oversaw the procurements, will preserve the trust of society at international partners and ensure objectivity during additional clarifications and possible investigations. In other words, there's more coming over the next few days.
During additional clarifications.
Additional clarifications.
More things are going to be clarified in the days ahead, Doc.
So this shakeup is going all the way down to the provincial levels. 5 regional governors were also relieved of their duties, according to officials. Alexei Kuleba, who is to step down as head of the Kiev region, is expected to replace Tymoshenko as deputy head of Zelensky's administration. The other governors to be replaced represented Sumy, Dnipropetrovsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. Now, in a bid to prevent potential misuse of state and military funds, Zelensky said he had signed decrees preventing senior officials from, now this is interesting, from traveling abroad unless for approved trips at a time when all men of working age are prevented from leaving Ukraine since Russia launched its full-scale invasion 11 months ago.
So these government officials were taking vacations.
Sure, and they were probably taking big suitcases with them too, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if they want to rest now, this is Zelensky saying this, they will rest outside public service. Officials will no longer be able to travel abroad for vacation or for any other non-governmental purpose, Zelensky added. So it's...
Well, can his wife do $40,000 a day shopping sprees in Paris?
Oh, I don't know if that would count or not, Rick. I mean, she has to travel and she has to look good when she travels, right? You don't want her showing up at the UN or World Economic Forum in a rag or anything, do you?
Well, she ought to at least cut it back to like $10,000 a day so that people aren't suspicious.
So what do you think is really happening here, Rick? Is this an effort by Zelensky to shadow his own corruption, or is he being pressured by the West to say, listen, we know you guys are sucking the money out of the West.
I don't think he's being pressured by the West because the West doesn't care. Biden doesn't. You think Biden cares about corruption? The only thing Biden would care about is if he got cut out of the corruption.
Right. Where's my 10% cut?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about Joe Biden, who demanded that the previous president of Ukraine fire the Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating corruption.
That's right.
All right, so Biden's not behind investigating corruption. My guess is somebody independent of governments has done its own investigation of the corruption of the Ukrainian government.
And they're about ready to drop a dime on
yes.
it. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. Somebody has the information that's going to seriously damage Zelensky, damage him immensely in begging for money. So we'll see what happens. But he's firing people to make it look like he's clean. Okay. And if there's anybody that has been siphoning money off of the war, it's Zelensky. That's the guy you should be looking into. Finland, this is interesting. So Finland and Sweden have been, trying to make a bid to become members of NATO. They were on track, fast track to become NATO members. Suddenly, Sweden has been rejected by Turkey.
Right.
Turkey's not just saying, we're going to think about it. Turkey has now said no to Sweden. Because there was an incident a few days ago where a politician in Sweden burned the Islamic Quran in an outdoor protest, and President Erdogan of Turkey said this should not have happened in Sweden. You want to join NATO, and yet you're letting the Quran be burned in the streets of Sweden. We don't want you in NATO. So where this is at now is that Sweden is out. They're completely out. And Finland is now suggesting they're going to continue on the membership track without Sweden.
That's right. So Finland, for the first time, opened the door to potentially decoupling its NATO application from that of Sweden after its neighbor encountered fresh resistance from Turkish President Recep Erdogan. The path floated by Foreign Minister Pekka Haavisto, if it becomes more serious, would mark a significant shift in Finnish policy since the Nordic nations jointly applied to join NATO back in May of this year.
So apparently the membership application has 2 countries on it. They're co-signers.
And if I recall, that was kind of how the PR came out and everything, and that NATO made a big deal about it too. Jens Stoltenberg had a big presentation at NATO headquarters with the 2 ambassadors from Finland and Sweden announcing it. So this was a big deal for NATO too.
But what I'm saying is, what it appears to me is that the actual formal application has co-signers on a single application for membership. So now they have to, by protocol, move Finland off of that application and somehow not send Finland to the back of the line, and somehow legally let Finland continue in the process of where they're at right now without their partner Sweden. That's what's taking place right now. This next story, this is interesting. This comes from New Delhi TV in India. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who is now promoting a new book that he wrote called Never Give an Inch, Fighting for the America I Love. In that book, he tells a story about how close the world came in 2019 to nuclear war. But the nuclear war was between India and Pakistan. Doc, I went back and took a look, and sure enough, we reported it, but we didn't know that what was taking place is what Mr. Pompeo has described in his book. All we talked about was, hey, things are real tense between Pakistan and India. Remember, guys, these 2 countries are nuclear armed. We didn't know that they actually were making motions to load their nuclear warheads to go at it, according to Mike Pompeo.
That's right. So former U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has claimed that he was awakened to speak to his then Indian counterpart, Sushma Swaraj, who told him that Pakistan was preparing for a nuclear attack in the wake of the Balakot surgical strike in February 2019, and India is preparing its own escalatory response. Now, in his latest book, Never Give an Inch, Fighting for the America I Love, that hit the stores Tuesday, Mr. Pompeo says that the incident took place when he was in Hanoi for the U.S.-North Korea summit at the end of February of that year, and his team worked overnight with both New Delhi and Islamabad to avert this crisis. He says, I do not think the world properly knows just how close the India-Pakistan rivalry came to spilling over into a nuclear conflagration in February 2019. The truth is, I don't precisely know the answer either. I just know it was close, Pompeo writes. Now, I'll never forget the night I was in Hanoi, Vietnam, when, as if negotiating with the North Koreans on nuclear weapons wasn't enough, India and Pakistan started threatening each other in connection with a decades-long dispute over the northern border region of Kashmir. After an Islamist terrorist attack in Kashmir, probably enabled in part by Pakistan's lax counter-terror policies, killed 40 Indians, India responded with an airstrike against terrorists inside Pakistan. The Pakistanis shot down a plane in a subsequent dogfight and kept the Indian pilot prisoner. Now, in Hanoi, I was awakened to speak with my Indian counterpart. He believed the Pakistanis had begun to prepare their nuclear weapons for a strike. India, he informed me, was contemplating its own escalation. I asked him to do nothing and give us a minute to sort things out. Pompeo writes in his book, which wrongly refers to Swaraj as he. I began to work with Ambassador, then National Security Advisor John Bolton, who was with me in the tiny secure communications facility in our hotel. I reached the actual leader of Pakistan, Army Chief General Qamar Javad Bajwa, with whom I had engaged many times. I told him what the Indians had told me. He said it wasn't true, Pompeo says. But that's one of the regions of the world you don't talk about. You don't see headlines in the news about it. But if there's to be some would say that if there's to be a nuclear war in the world, it would start there first, between India and Pakistan. And because all the other major players, if you will, that are out there that have nuclear weapons, there are so many safeguards in place and so many checks and balances in place that you just can't go out and flip a switch and throw out everything all at once. It's not that way with India and Pakistan. You've got people at the command level that can make decisions regarding nuclear weapons. So it's a whole different scenario there. But if nukes start flying India and Pakistan, that could prompt other nations to say, we can use nukes too.
So, Doc, 5 years ago, none of us knew.
While we were peacefully sleeping in our beds,
none of us knew how close we were to a war. I've seen this over and over during these 25 years of doing this program, where something will be released years later, and we'll be told, yeah, things were really tense, 4 or 5 years ago, and what it is that it is evidence that the Spirit of the Lord intervened and prevented a catastrophe. That men were ready to slaughter vast numbers of humans. And the Spirit of the Lord would intervene and calm things down.
And say, not now.
Not now. Even though the people involved don't know the Lord. But the Spirit of the Lord was active in preventing a horrible war to take place.
And I thought it was interesting that Mr. Pompeo said in there, it was close. I don't even know how close it was.
And he was in Hanoi.
Yes. Dealing with North Korea and their nukes.
Yes. Elon Musk admitted that he got a second COVID vaccine booster shot, and he said he felt like he was dying for days.
That's right, Rick. Scott Adams has had a tweet that came out the other day, and he basically said that the anti-vaxxers have won the fight. And, of course, that's stirred up a lot of trouble. Elon Musk responded to Scott Adams in that particular tweet and said, I had major side effects from my second booster shot. Felt like I was dying for several days. Hopefully, no permanent damage, but I don't know.
But I don't know.
And they don't know.
So the richest man in the world could have died from a COVID vaccine shot.
Or it could yet die from a gene therapy jab.
But yeah, because he's not out of the woods yet.
That's right.
He's got it inside his body. How many of the so-called COVID vaccine conspiracy theories, how many of them have turned out to be true? Just about all of them.
Yeah, we're 68-0, I think, right now, as far as the score is concerned. And so
the things that we talk about this year that our critics will say, conspiracy theory, 3 to 4 years from now, the public will say, it was true. And yet...
you'll still be a conspiracy theorist.
Yes. And they'll continue to lie and deceive the people, and the people will continue to fall for it for 3, 4, 5 years.
Oh, surely they won't lie to us again, will they?
Yes, they will.
So, he also had another tweet, too. Yes. It talked about his cousin. So in further response, he said, my cousin, who is young and in peak health, had a serious case of myocarditis, had to go to the hospital. And so we're seeing all these cases. Rick, prior to 3 years ago, did you even know what myocarditis was?
No.
Had you ever heard of it?
No.
Had you ever heard of anybody dropping dead on a football field?
No.
Or, playing soccer or anything?
No.
No, you never heard of that. And yet, now it's in our common vernacular every day.
Yeah. Several weeks ago, Rod Stewart, the British rocker, his 11-year-old boy had a heart attack. I hope he does well.
11 years old.
11 years old. Pray for him. Pray for Rod Stewart's son. 11 years old, had a heart attack. Yeah, I saw the notice that Rod Stewart was, asking for prayers for his son. But it didn't say he'd been vaccinated, but you just...
You know.
You just know. 11-year-olds don't have heart attacks.
This story with this football player here a couple weeks ago, Damar Hamlin, he showed up at a football game last night. I thought he had a heart attack here a week and a half ago, but he showed up at a football game. He was up in the skybox with his family, but you never saw his face the entire time.
Oh, really?
You saw all the members of his family. You saw his sister, I think his brother, and his nephew. That you saw them in the skybox, but he was in a hood, couldn't see his face or anything. It was so weird and so strange, as if you should.
The paralysis.
Well, if he does, I could see it justified there. But on the other hand, I don't even know now if it was Damar Hamlin.
We don't know that.
And the fact that they do that, these guys make us question. So you got to be thinking, all right, is this a gaslighting operation this time? You've got to ask those questions.
Hey, have you noticed, Doc? I've noticed it for the past week. Have you noticed how many chemtrails we're getting here in Florida?
You know what? I'm glad you said that, because this morning I go out and walk my dog every morning.
The sky was saturated this morning.
Yes, dozens of contrails through the sky. But I wanted to tell you what I observed this morning. I look at the sky every morning while I'm out walking my dog Fudge. And this morning I saw 2 jets fly overhead. One was leaving a contrail, the other wasn't. All right, help me with the science on that.
So if it's atmospheric, both of them should be producing contrails.
Right.
So what I saw, Doc, is the fake clouds.
Yes.
The sky was absolutely saturated with fake clouds.
In fact, I was going to walk in this morning and tell you, hey, Rick, did you see they're fumigating Florida today? Because that's exactly what it looked like.
We've been very fortunate in the years that I've lived here that there's, at least where we're at, that we don't get a lot of chemtrails. But there are times that we get saturated. And this week has been one of those weeks that they're spraying us like cockroaches. Because when my wife Susan got out of the car, she has an autoimmune disorder. And I said, Susan, look up at the fake clouds. I said, how many people like you are suffering from some unexplainable autoimmune disorder, and it's from what you're breathing that they're spraying into our lungs every day? We don't know what it is. And if you even say it's there, you're a conspiracy theorist. It's there. I can see it.
Look at the sky.
There it is.
I see one plane leaving a trail, one plane not leaving a trail. Explain that science to me. Now, Rick, after they shut down America, how long has that been? Was that a week and a half ago? For 5 days afterwards, you would go out in the morning, you wouldn't see a single chemtrail at all. Not a single one. It's all, the first day of it was the lockdown day. They locked down all the planes. Clear blue sky. And for 4 days afterwards, too.
Yeah, we have so few chemtrails here in Florida, at least, again, the area that we're in, that you tend to forget about them. And at times I wonder, are they spraying the rest of the country like it used to be when I lived in other states? I saw chemtrails every day. But here in Florida, I guess that there's so many, maybe it's the certain people that live in Florida that they get exempted. I don't know what it is, but they just don't hit Florida very heavily, except at times, and this week has been one of those times. Hey, before we close, we have a good thing to report. We were talking about Elon Musk a few minutes ago. Well, he has restored TruNews to Twitter. Thank you, Mr. Musk. We were in Twitter purgatory for, what, over a year?
Well, since
2 years? How long has it been?
Well, we were able to post all the way up to the middle of last year. And so, because there was an article that knocked us out last year.
We posted an article. There's the article.
Okay.
And
now,
we posted that article, which we got out of an Irish newspaper, about a young woman dying. And all we did is we asked the question, could this be related to the vaccine? And you see at the bottom of our tweet, this is June 14, 2022, and you see that misleading. And then we were banned from Twitter.
But this was the permanent ban. We'd been banned, put on suspension, double probation before, and all this other stuff. But that was the one that got us banned.
But what we know now is that the government was ordering Twitter to ban certain people.
They had FBI agents on the payroll.
It wasn't
instructing them.
Here, we thought all these years it was the leftists inside the social media companies who were going after conservatives. And what we know now from the Twitter files, it was the government ordering Twitter and other social media companies to ban people. So we have to assume that TruNews was banned because the Biden administration ordered Twitter to ban us. That's what you have to assume.
Right. Well, we're back on Twitter now. Our account has been restored. And this was our first tweet here. So TruNews proudly celebrates its release from Twitter purgatory by sharing I Am Tom McDonald's video with you. Say what you believe. Fight for free speech rights.
Okay, so if you don't know who Tom McDonald is, he's one of my favorite musical artists right now. You'll probably be surprised. Rick Wiles likes Tom McDonald. Yeah, I do. I think he's really bold and courageous, and he understands what's going on in the world, and he expresses it in his music, and he is doing through music what Doc and I do through news.
Right.
He's educating people about the regime, and so we're going to end today's True News with a portion of one of his videos, which probably about 6 months old, called Sheeple. And if you want to see the rest of the video and all of his other videos, you can go to YouTube. Go to the Tom McDonald channel on YouTube and watch it. He's a really talented, creative young man, and he's taking a stand for freedom. And Tom, if you see this, I want you to know I pray for you. I lift your name up to the Lord, and I pray for you because I think you're a brave warrior, and I believe God's hand is upon you. And there's coming a day you're going to fight for Jesus Christ. So here's Tom McDonald.
Humans been controlled since the day that they were civilized. The truth has been so heavily politicized. If you don't know who's controlling you and killing all the little guys, find out who you're not allowed to criticize. Black folks who were never ever actual slaves, fighting with white folks who ain't actual Nazis, controlled by rich folks who use the news to make hate, while elite folks control other political parties. It's a big lie, trying to make you pick sides, trying to make you burn the cities down and kill each other. They got sick minds, big lies, deep on the police so that there's big crime. To take away our freedom, to restore order they let die. Play with people, turn men into women, make the counterculture mainstream to mix up the system. Change the pronouns, if gender is a spectrum, so is privilege. I know poor white folks and black celebrities with millions. They starve you with a lack of information and only give you facts through a branded corporation. Distort your worldview with an algorithm that changes based on propaganda curated for your engagement. We can't be free, can't have no peace till we're on the same team, but y'all are sheep. Glued to screens, just part of the machine. Y'all are sheep. What do y'all believe? Oh, my sheep. Nothing's what it seems. Hollywood been writing your brain, controlling your mouth. You say lit, fleek, bet, cap, they trying to dumb you down. They endorse whatever narrative is popular to shout and use minorities in movies for diversity clout. Two sides on the spectrum, but ain't none of them honest. Took the red pill and the blue pill, spit them both in the garbage. Being woke used to mean you understood you're a target, and now it's having two good legs and never taking a step forward. If you agree, it's free speech. Disagree, it's hate speech. Erase it if it came from anywhere except the mainstream. Trump supporters labeled as the racist, but that can't be. Lincoln was Republican, and that's who ended slavery. Science been politicized, it's easy to see. A mask became a symbol of which side you believe. But you'll never cure a sickness till you cure the greed, because the problem with our natural immunity is it's free. Society is broken, want you locked inside a cubicle, addicted to pornography, liquor, and pharmaceuticals. Tell you that you're fat and poor and you were never beautiful, then tweet how much they love you when they hear about your funeral. We can't be free, can't have no peace till we're on the same team, but y'all are sheep. Blue to screen's just part of the machine. Y'all are sheep.